So how does uh, a military conflict in the Middle East, the price of a concert ticket, an AI-driven bulldozer, and the Japanese yen all somehow connect?
It sounds like a joke setup, honestly.
Right, but it's actually the reality we're looking at today. Welcome to the Deep Dive. We are taking a massive stack of highly current intelligence reports, market analyses, breaking news from mid-March 2026, and we're synthesizing it all.
Because there is a very clear through line connecting all of these seemingly random things.
Exactly, and the mission today is to connect those dots.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Imagine the global economy right now is this massive high-speed train, but it's trying to navigate through a severe earthquake.
It's a great way to put it.
Yeah, and so some of the train cars are literally derailing, right?
Yeah.
But then others are mysteriously speeding up and ignoring the earthquake entirely.
Because we are watching a profound divergence. It's like the physical world is experiencing these massive crises that constrain the global economy.
Right.
But the digital and technological worlds are somehow defying those exact same laws of gravity.
And to really grasp that, we have to start with the physical constraints. The biggest one right now is the geopolitical earthquake in the Middle East.
Yeah, the Morgan Stanley Global Pulse report really lays this out. We are looking at the fallout from the joint U.S.-Israel military operations against Iran that started back on February 28th.
Which led to the death of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei.
Exactly. And politically, culturally, that is a seismic event. But economically, the immediate shockwave is that the Strait of Hormuz is essentially closed.
And we need to quantify what that actually means for you, the listener.
Hmm.
Because, whether you're filling up your car or just buying groceries, this hits you.
It hits everyone.
Yeah, the Strait of Hormuz is the world's most critical energy choke point. We are talking about 20 million barrels of oil a day being cut off.
Which is roughly 20% of the entire global supply.
It's insane. Imagine just taking 1 out of every 5 gallons of fuel on Earth and evaporating it overnight.
Well, and the panic is completely visible in the institutional response. We have breaking news from the International Energy Agency, the IEA.
Right, the emergency release.
Exactly. All 32 member countries unanimously agreed to release 400 million barrels of emergency reserves. Unanimously.
Which almost never happens.
No, it's unprecedented. This is literally only the 6th collective action of this scale since the IEA was created in 1974.
Wow.
It acts as a temporary shock absorber, sure, but markets trade on the future. And Morgan Stanley outlined 3 potential paths forward from here.
Okay, so what's the first scenario?
Scenario 1 is essentially de-escalation and regime change. So pragmatic elements within Iran manage to negotiate a ceasefire.
Meaning the economy opens up and the oil starts flowing again.
Right. And that would drastically shift the geopolitical reality, especially for Russia and China.
Scenario 2, though, is prolonged conflict.
Yeah, and this is where the IRGC consolidates power internally. They expand the war using proxies, the Houthis, Hezbollah.
So the strait stays closed.
Exactly. And the cost of shipping freight just skyrockets because vessels have to reroute entirely around Africa. That is devastating for Asian oil importers.
Which leads to the third Morgan Stanley scenario, which is civil war.
Mm.
Basically, a power vacuum that turns the region into a proxy battleground for the U.S., Russia, China, and Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, it's the darkest path.
But wait, I have to push back a little here on viewing this just through the lens of, crude oil barrels.
Okay, how so?
Well, the supreme leader is a religious figure for, 200 million Shia Muslims globally? And looking at the Morgan Stanley report, at least 2 grand ayatollahs have already issued fatwas calling for retaliation.
That's a really critical point.
Doesn't this mean the risk isn't just an oil bottleneck, but a completely unpredictable global security threat?
It absolutely does. You're entirely right to push back on that. The dual political and religious nature of the supreme leader means those fatwas carry immense weight. It elevates the risk of asymmetric responses, cyber attacks, terrorism. But financially speaking, why the listener should pair right now is how vulnerable Asian marmits are.
Right, because they rely on that specific supply line.
Exactly. Japan, India, and especially China, which gets about 90% of its Iranian oil straight through those channels, they are highly exposed to this supply shock.
So investors are just fleeing.
Yeah, they are scrambling towards safe havens, gold, U.S. treasuries, the Swiss franc, because the physical world is suddenly very unpredictable.
And very expensive.
Yeah.
Which perfectly transitions us to the macro ripple effect of all this. Because a physical constraint like an oil shock breeds inflation.
It does. And that inflation lands squarely on the desks of the world's central banks.
So let's look at the ING Think predictions for 2026. because the central banks are caught in a massive crossfire right now.
They really are.
I picture the U.S. Federal Reserve right now like someone driving a car in an icy road,
Okay.
and they have one foot slamming the gas pedal and the other foot is slamming the brake.
That is painfully accurate.
Right. The gas pedal is the labor market. It's super fragile. ING calls it a low-fire jobs market.
Right, and we're seeing major layoff announcements from Amazon and UPS.
Exactly. So that tells the Fed, hey, you need to cut rates to save jobs.
But then you have the brake pedal.
Yep. The brake pedal is sticky inflation, which is now being supercharged by this oil shock, plus all the ongoing tariffs and insurance costs.
So ING expects the Fed is going to have to cut rates to a neutral setting of about 3.25%. Just to keep the labor market from collapsing.
Even if it means tolerating some inflation. What about Europe?
Well, the European Central Bank, the ECB, is actually holding steady. They feel like they're in a relatively good place.
Must be nice.
Yeah, but the Bank of England is enormously divided. You have hawks who are terrified of their 3.6% inflation rate and doves who are focused on falling wage growth.
But the massive outlier here, the central bank that brings us right back to that vulnerability in Asia, is the Bank of Japan.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Everyone else is cutting rates or holding them steady, but the Bank of Japan is actually raising them. ING projects still hit 1.0% by the end of 2026.
Which doesn't sound like much, but for Japan, that's huge.
Right. And combine that with this report from VT Markets. Japan's finance minister is issuing severe verbal warnings about foreign exchange intervention.
Because the yen is crashing.
Exactly. The USD-JPY exchange rate just hit 159.38. It is nearing that critical 160 level that triggered massive government intervention back in 2024.
Here's where it gets really interesting for anyone watching the options market.
Okay, break that down for us.
Derivative traders are seeing implied volatility just absolutely surge. And the reason this matters to the listener is the underlying mechanics of the carry trade.
The interest rate differential between the U.S. and Japan.
Right. For years, Japan had zero or negative interest rates. So global investors would borrow billions of yen for practically free, convert it to U.S. dollars, and buy high-yielding assets like U.S. treasuries or tech stocks.
So it's basically free money as long as the yen stays weak.
Yeah, exactly. But if Japan raises rates or intervenes to strengthen the yen, suddenly that massive debt becomes incredibly expensive to pay back.
Wow. So investors would get margin called.
Yes. They'd have to rapidly sell off their U.S. stocks and global assets just to buy yen to cover their loans. It creates a high-stakes environment where a geopolitical shock in the Middle East could literally trigger a massive sell-off on Wall Street.
Because everything is tied together.
Everything in the physical and financial world, yes.
But then there's the technology sector, which is wild, because while central banks and energy markets are completely bogged down by physical geography and inflation, the tech world is entirely decoupling from these macro headwinds.
They're playing a completely different game.
Right. It's March 16th, 2026. Today, Nvidia's GTC conference kicks off in San Jose, and they're unveiling the Vera Rubin architecture, the R100 GPU.
And we have to talk about the specs on this thing because it's staggering. It's manufactured on a 3-nanometer process.
3 nanometers. That's like the width of a few dozen atoms.
Literally. And by getting that small, they are packing 336 billion transistors onto a single chip. Plus, it utilizes HBM4 memory, which stacks memory vertically to drastically increase bandwidth.
And they aren't the only ones. We have a report from Biocom International projecting an 87% compound annual growth rate in Broadcom's AI semiconductor revenue.
That is a massive trajectory.
It's driven by their ASIC accelerator chips and these Tomahawk 6 switching chips that handle network traffic. But the application of all this hardware is what's really shifting.
Right, we are moving way beyond those 2023-era generative AI chatbots.
Yeah, nobody is just asking AI to write a polite email anymore. It's all about agentic and physical AI now.
Like Salesforce launching Agentforce.
Exactly. Autonomous agents that handle complex sales pipelines completely on their own. But it's not just software. Caterpillar is launching the Cat AI Nexus.
An AI-driven mini excavator.
Right. It uses Nvidia's Isaac robotics platform for autonomous digging. Just a bulldozer out there reading the terrain, making decisions, no human in the cab.
It's incredible.
But hold on, I have to play devil's advocate here. We just spent the first half of this deep dive talking about a massive energy crisis and an oil shock.
Yeah.
But these new AI data centers require gigawatt-level power. I mean, aren't these tech giants going to hit a power wall where their digital ambitions literally run out of physical electricity?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you are hitting on the exact bottleneck. But Nvidia knows this. Their focus on liquid cooling and the energy efficiency of that 3-nanometer chip isn't just a marketing feature.
It's a survival necessity.
Exactly. The companies that are winning in 2026 aren't just buying chips. They have the data foundation to deploy them efficiently. They are optimizing their systems to use less power because they know the grid is constrained.
They're using the tech to outsmart the physical limitations,
Precisely.
which brings all these massive top-down macro forces down to the micro level. How are regulatory forces and tech advancements actually playing out for consumers?
Well, let's look at the antitrust trial against Live Nation and Ticketmaster. It resumed today in New York.
Right, and the DOJ actually settled their part of it, but 36 states and D.C. are refusing to back down.
Because they're pressing claims of monopolistic behavior. They argue Live Nation controls the choke point of live entertainment and uses it to drive up fees.
Trying to untangle that is like trying to untangle a bowl of spaghetti. The states are pulling on one noodle, the ticketing platform, but the whole bowl moves with it.
That's a great analogy.
Because Ticketmaster's defense is arguing, hey, it's not us. It's the artists, the venues, and the promoters who actually set the prices and decide the inventory.
And we are just reporting the facts here, not taking sides on who is right. But the core of that legal gridlock is a battle over access and cost.
Access to entertainment.
Right. But contrast that corporate gridlock with a massive breakthrough in healthcare, specifically biotech.
The BioKiom report on Legend Biotech.
Yes. They have a treatment called Carvykti for multiple myeloma.
And the data on this is just phenomenal.
It really is. Because it's a CAR-T cell therapy, which requires immense computational power to sequence genomic data and engineer a patient's own immune cells to fight the cancer.
And because it's now being used in earlier treatment lines, the sales are projected to hit $2.8 billion in 2026.
Which pushes the company toward break-even. It's an incredible story.
So synthesizing those two micro stories.
Both are fundamentally about access. One is this bitter legal battle over access to entertainment and fair pricing. The other is a technological triumph over access to life-saving medical treatments.
Right.
It just shows that despite all the geopolitical chaos, human innovation at the micro level is still accelerating.
It really is. So just to briefly recap our journey today, we started with this massive disruption in the Strait of Hormuz. We saw how that oil shock forces the Fed to walk a terrifying tightrope with interest rates.
While the Bank of Japan fights to keep the carry trade from unwinding.
Exactly. And then we headed straight into the exploding world of agentic AI and these micro battles for consumer fairness and healthcare breakthroughs.
It's a lot to process.
It is. But I know you have a final thought to leave us with.
I do. I want you to mull this over. We are watching a historical divergence. We live in a physical world that is strictly constrained by geography, energy choke points, and resource scarcity.
When the oil stops, everything stops.
Right. Yet, we are rapidly building this digital world of agentic and physical AI that seems totally boundless. So the great tension of the next decade won't just be nations fighting nations.
What will it be?
It's going to be whether our physical limitations will starve our digital ambitions, or if our AI will evolve fast enough to solve the physical world's resource scarcity for us.
Are we going to run out of power before we build the machine that can save us?
Wow.
That is definitely something to think about. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you, and we'll see you next time.